Hi, thanks for watching this video. In my last post, I talked about the doshas in general, and I told you I'd go through all three of them. So today let's take a look at Vata. On the website, the link is below on the screen, there's a short questionnaire you can take to identify your dosha. Some people have one dosha like Vata or Pitta. Others are bi-dosha. They have an equal balance more or less of Vata and Pitta or Vata and Kapha. And some people are even tri-doshas with all three different doshas or body constitution types in about equal balances. So if you're a pure Vata, then I hope you identify with what I'm going to talk about on this blog. If you're not, you might be Vata Pitta or Vata Kapha, then some of what we talk about will be applicable and you'll be able to see yourself in some of what I cover, but maybe not all of it. So let's get started. Remember, the doshas are based on the 5 elements in Ayurveda, and Vata is a combination of ether and air, primarily air. And what do you think about when you think about air? I think about leaves blowing in the wind. I think about cool fall weather, and that's a pretty good description of a Vata type. Vata types tend to be light. They tend to be cool. They blow around like leaves in the wind almost. Here are some physical characteristics of a Vata type. Vatas tend to be slender, sexually excitable, but quickly satiated. They tend to have cold hands and cold feet, and they don't like cold comfort or cold climates. They don't particularly enjoy fall and winter unless they can really bundle up and stay warm. Cold winds are troublesome for them. They have a variable appetite and digestive efficiency, but we'll see later that dry foods, rough foods, tend not to be very good for Vatas. They have high energy but in short bursts, not a lot of stamina, and so they tire quickly and reach overexertion easily. They generally have dry hair and dry skin and don't perspire very much. Mentally, they're very creative, mentally quick, just like the wind, highly imaginative. Their thoughts seem to blow from one thought to another. They talk and walk quickly, and so exercises that get them to slow down a bit are helpful. They grasp new topics, new knowledge quickly, but they also tend to forget things quickly. And they have an irregular daily routine. They don't need to have everything programmed out step by step, a checklist of what they're going to do in the day. Emotionally, Vatas tend to be happy people, joyful, full of enthusiasm when Vata is in balance. They respond to stress with worry and fear, anxiety. They can even become a little bit frustrated when they have too much stress in their lives. They tend to act on impulses. They respond quickly, again, just like the wind blowing. They have changeable moods. Go outside on a windy day and feel the wind stop and start and change directions. That's a lot like a Vata characteristic. They're excitable, lively, and they have fun personalities. Vatas are fun to be around. We'll come back to these principles of treatment because they don't just apply to Vatas. They're common throughout Ayurveda. The first is Somanya, which means like increases like. If a Vata has a Vata deficiency, then they need to eat foods that are Vata increasing. Light foods, for example. If they have an excess of Vata, too much Vata, then they need opposites to balance and cure. So they might have a diet for a while that's with heavier foods, things that will help them ground more. So for excess Vata, use foods that are opposite, that oppose the characteristics that a person has. And if Vata is imbalanced and insufficient, use foods that have Vata attributes. So let's take a look at what some of those different kinds of foods might be. In general, Vatas enjoy and should eat warm, moist, substantial foods. And that's because Vatas tend to be dry, cool, and very light. And so here we're balancing Vata by using some opposites. Soups and stews are good examples of foods that are warm, moist, and substantial. Vatas should use sweet, sour, and salty foods, but minimize pungent, bitter, and astringent foods. For example, most legumes are astringent. And we'll see that legumes aren't a favored food for the Vata diet. And avoid raw foods. Raw foods tend to be rough, cold, and Vatas are already cool, so they don't need foods that are going to cool them off some more. Here's a short example of the kinds of foods that enhance Vata. Apricots, avocados, bananas, papayas, and peaches are good fruits. Cooked vegetables are warm, and so they'll decrease the coolness in Vata. Red and black lentils are good, but most legumes aren't. Red and black lentils are softer, they get mushy, and they're easy to digest. Lighter meats, all nuts and seeds, but taken in moderation. Nuts and seeds tend to be dry and rough, and so they're good for Vatas, but not in excessive amounts. Use dairy products in moderation. Almond milk is a good substitute for Vatas in their diet. And all oils can be used, but sesame is probably the best. It's a little bit lighter than some of the other oils. On my website, you'll find a Vata dietary guideline PDF file that you can download, and it has more in-depth examples of foods to enjoy and foods to avoid or minimize their use of, and some explanations on the handout of why that's so. Here's a little bit about exercise for Vatas. Remember, Vata is from the elements ether and space. And so ether and space need to slow down, move at a slower pace. That should say ether and air. There we go. Ether and air need a slower pace. They need to be more focused. They become weak if they get depleted or they're out of balance. The best time for a Vata to exercise is in the afternoon after work. My wife is a pure Vata, and she loves to come home and take a walk in the early evening before supper time. And so 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock is perfect for her, late afternoon. One of the best exercises for everyone, but especially for Vatas, is walking. A 30-minute walk at a low or moderate pace so they don't get energy depleted is good. Take walks in fresh air, breathe deeply, engage in some pranayama or breathwork exercises. Fill up the lower part of the lungs with air. Get the entire lung full of air, breathe it in slowly, hold it for a second, and then breathe it out slowly. Vatas should avoid exercising, especially outdoors in extreme weather and wind, because they're very sensitive to cold. Their lower extremities cool easily and quickly, and they suffer from that. So if you are a Vata and you're going to go outside when it's cold or windy, cover your extremities and make sure they're protected. Vatas tend to be distracted easily. We saw that because they flit around like the wind. Their minds are fast and rapid. And so when exercising, especially when walking, to be grounded, avoid distractions. Put your cell phone on the kitchen table before you go out for a walk. Unplug your earphones and just walk when you're walking. Weightlifting's not a bad exercise for Vatas. Don't overexert or overtrain. Use light weights, slow repetitions, and low number of repetitions. Build up weight tolerance, the ability to lift weights slowly over time. It's not a competition against anyone else. You're just treating your body nicely. So don't overtrain. Yoga is very good for Vatas, but if they do the right kind of yoga. Good yogas are gentle yoga, yin yoga, and yin is from Chinese medicine, yin and yang, and restorative yoga. Avoid power yoga, hot yoga. Vata isn't going to enjoy a yoga class in a sweatshop, for example. Poses that are balance poses are good for Vatas, as are static poses like Tadasana or mountain pose, tree pose. Those are static balance poses. Those are very good for Vatas. Hiking is good. It's another form of walking. Vatas should take light or go on light hikes. Go where there are trees, waterfalls, lots of foliage. Stay well hydrated. Avoid steep hikes and mountains. Avoid high elevation. Not good for people who are already very airy. And of course, avoid extreme weather where you're going to get cooled off if you're a Vata. Slow biking is good for Vatas, not race biking. Flat terrain, well hydrated biking. Avoid extreme weather and hills. Again, Vatas tend to overexert and overexert quickly, and that's not good for the body. We want to take good care of ourselves. So that's a quick introduction to the Vata constitutional type. If you'd like to learn more about what you should be eating, what foods to avoid, and what foods to enjoy, download the PDF on the website. And next time around, we'll take a look at Pitta. Thanks again.